Hi there, let's get the Unit 3 test done. So go into Unit 3 and scroll all the way down until you find that test. Right click, open that in a new window, and then resize it so that you can see both this video and your test. And then I'm going to scroll right back up to the top and start at 3.01 Unit Introduction. Beautiful. In this section, you will learn about repetition and pattern, how repetition and pattern are created using different art elements, how pattern is used in specific artworks. Let's take a look at our first question. It says, the use of repeated symbols or patterns to communicate ideas is called, and then we have question 2. A blank is what is shown on the computer screen behind all the software programs and icons. It's visible when no software programs are running. What's that? What is Mosaic? How are the tiles different from tesserae? A bitmap is a raster image, which means it is made up of what? What is a text tile? What are color highlights? When you zoom in on a fractal, what happens? A blank is an image that is repeated over and over at different sizes and in different places to make a company's brand and products recognizable. An inkscape. Which setting can help you force a point or line to be drawn on specific points on a grid? All right, so that's what we're looking for in this test. Remember, it's always good test-taking strategy to read your questions ahead of time so you know what you're looking for. Okay, in this lesson, Repetition and Pattern Overview, you will learn about repetition and pattern and how they are used in different types of artwork and designs. Repetition is the use of repeated art elements to emphasize those art elements and to make patterns. Artists often use repetition to emphasize parts of an artwork or to maintain consistency from one part of an artwork to another. Computers make repetition easy through the use of copy and paste, although knowing how and when to use it effectively is not always easy. Let us learn about how specific art elements can be repeated. Lines. A single line can be straight or curved, short or long, horizontal or vertical, or many other things. A single line by itself has no repetition. If you add a second line that shares the same qualities as the first line, the line has been repeated. Repetition of a line happens whenever some or all of a single line's qualities are repeated. Often, artists will use repetition of line style to establish a consistent style from one artwork to the next or to establish a consistent tone within an artwork. Artists will often have a distinctive, recognizable style because they consistently use a similar technique for drawing their lines. Painters might use similar brush strokes across multiple paintings. Several comic book artists working on a single comic book use similar line drawing techniques to make a consistent style. Book illustrators do this as well. Sometimes even a single line quality will be enough to make a repetition recognizable. For example, a single line width will be identifiable the more it's used, even if it's used to make straight, curved, jagged lines or long lines. Colors. The same color repeated throughout an artwork can help the viewer of an artwork focus on other elements of an artwork, such as how it uses lines or shapes. The repetition of a small number of colors throughout an artwork is another way to focus attention on the other features of an artwork. Repeated colors can also be used as a way to create a specific mood or tone. For example, a color scheme using yellows and oranges might feel bright and cheerful. Similarly, a single or monochromatic hue repeated with changes in saturation and value would be another way to set a mood. For example, an artist working entirely in shades or tints of blue might be trying to express a mood of gloominess or sadness. Color highlights are small touches of color used to emphasize parts of an artwork. Repeated highlights of a single color can draw the eye to specific parts of an artwork while tying those parts of the artwork together. I remember seeing a question on color highlights. Let's see if we can find it. What are color highlights? Small touches of color used to emphasize parts of an artwork. Hey, that's exactly what it is. It says it right there. Ding! And then click Save. Nice, so we found one. Woohoo! Very nice. Shapes. A single shape can have many variations in width, height, symmetry, and color. In graphic design, shapes are often repeated to help the viewer focus on the repetition or on other parts of the artwork. Logos are an example of the use of repetition. A logo is an image that is repeated over and over again at different sizes and in different places to make a company's brand and products more recognizable. I remember that. I know I saw that question. A blank is an image that is repeated over and over at different sizes and different places to make a company's brand and products recognizable. Click Save. The repeated use of a shape with variations in size, color, and texture is one way to create a pattern. The repeated use of shape with variations in size and color is one way. You'll learn more about patterns soon. Was that one of our questions? The repeated use of symbols or patterns to communicate ideas. Okay, maybe not. Oh, here's our checkpoint. Read the beginning of the comic strip and then select the frame on the right that repeats the line style used in the comic strip to the left. Oh, I see. Okay, so which one of these would be a repetition of the line style used there? That's pretty obvious. Okay. That was super easy. I bet you guys could do all of those checkpoints by yourself. So that was the end of 3.01. Repetition. Let's look at pattern. A pattern is the use of repetition of art elements such as lines, colors, and shapes to create a specific effect. The shapes, lines, or colors of a pattern are often repeated in a symmetrical way. Patterns come in many different sizes, from the threadwork embroidery on the edge of a handkerchief to the pattern of skyscrapers that make up a city's skyline. Some patterns used in art are inspired by patterns found in nature, from the spiraling shape of a conch shell to the wonderful shapes on a butterfly's wings. Patterns can be made up of geometric lines and shapes, or they can use more recognizable symbols such as the moon, plants, or animals. In cultural and religious artwork, recognizable symbols often have a specific meaning or set of meanings. The repetition of these symbols can create a visual pattern that also has a specific meaning. Motif is the use of repeated symbols or patterns to communicate ideas. Yes. I knew I saw that. The use of repeated symbols and patterns to communicate ideas is motif. Click Save. Complete these steps to open Inkscape. I think we all know how to do that. We're going to skip that. We're going to skip that. So I think you can do that one on your own. Okay. The type of artwork being created will often determine the ways in which patterns are used. Let us learn more about how patterns are used in different types of art. Textiles. A textile is a material created from weaving together fibers to create a cloth or fabric. A fiber is a thin, flexible material made from plant, animal, or human-made materials. Textiles are used to make clothes, carpet, curtains, and many other things. A woven fiber is itself a type of pattern, and there are many different kinds of techniques for weaving fibers together. Woven cloth is often made from threading rows of horizontal thread called the woof or weft through rows of vertical thread called the warp. In addition to the pattern of woven cloth, artists who make textiles use different techniques to add decorative patterns. Some patterns are woven into the cloth as it is made, while other patterns are stitched or embroidered onto cloth after it has been made. Decorative patterns range from the geometrical to abstract patterns of flowers to nearly realistic depictions of historical or fantastical events. Many textile patterns involve the repeated use of shape and color. The weaving techniques used to make textiles are often used to make baskets out of plant fibers. Like woven cloth, additional patterns can also be woven into baskets. Buildings. The symmetry of most buildings forms a pattern. Some buildings are large enough that these symmetries are hard to see from inside. Outside, the symmetries and patterns become more apparent. In a skyscraper, rows of windows or other decorative elements might form a simple pattern. Some architects, like Frank Gehry, designed buildings that challenge this idea of symmetry. Among many projects, Gehry designed the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao, Spain, and the Experience Music Project in Seattle, Washington. Both of these designs use symmetrical patterns of curving lines and sharp edges to create buildings without the typical right angles found in most buildings. For buildings that serve a civic, religious, or other specific purpose, architectural patterns are often used to send specific messages. For example, the tall arching ceilings of a cathedral might be an expression of the human impulse toward the divine. Some architectural patterns are based on historical or conceptual ideas, such as the way that theaters have lobbies, skyscrapers have foyers, and cathedrals have a narthex or entranceway. These examples are social patterns based on tradition and expectation. Interior design is the use of furniture, carpeting, painting, flowers, statues, lighting, and other building elements to make the insides of buildings more pleasing to human beings. Based on a building's use and the people using it, interior designers often use repetition of these elements to make a space more usable and pleasant. This is House C of the Art and Media Center Rheinhaven in Dusseldorf, Germany by Frank Gehry. That is cool. Mosaic. Mosaic is an art form which uses combinations of small tiles of different colors to make an image or pattern. A mosaic tile is called a tessera. Mosaic tiles can be pebbles, pieces of shattered stone, pottery, shells, colored glass, or other things. Now, I know we had a question about mosaics, so let's look at what it is so we know what we're looking for. What is a mosaic? It is an art form which uses combinations of small tiles. Let's see. Here it is right there. Bam! Click save. Okay, but there was something else. It says, how are tiles different from tesserae? So let's keep reading. Mosaic tiling has been used for thousands of years in cultures all over the world, from South America to Africa, from China to Greece. Mosaic was often used to decorate floors, but has been used to decorate walls and ceilings. Today, mosaics are often still created in the traditional way by piecing tesserae together by hand. Computers have created new methods for creating mosaics. Artists can now use computer software to design mosaics and then use robots to place the tessera. Photomosaics are digital images made up of many smaller images. The patterns of color created by the small images combine to form a new larger image. This is a mosaic glass tile by Hakatai showing a landscape scene with trees in autumn. Illuminated Manuscript. is a book that's been decorated with images and patterns. Although there are people making illuminated manuscripts today, the term illuminated manuscript tends to refer to books made between the 4th and 16th centuries in England and Europe. These illuminated manuscripts were often religious in nature and used religious symbols and imagery as decoration. These books were the work of many people working together at different tasks and at different times. Some illuminated manuscripts took decades to finish. Some people would work on writing the text, others would draw images and patterns, and others would add color. Until the invention of the printing press, copying books by hand was the only way that copies of books were made. Illuminated manuscripts were copied with their images, colors, and patterns copied as exactly as possible. Jewelry is a wearable art form which uses precious metals, stones, and other materials to create wearable items such as necklaces, rings, earrings, and bracelets. Some of the metals used to make jewelry are bronze, gold, and silver, although many other metals are used. Sometimes organic materials are used such as bone, ivory, shells, or wood. Jewelry making is an art form which spans thousands of years through nearly every culture on the planet. Jewelry makers use patterns to emphasize rare stones or to make jewelry that identifies its wearer as a member of a specific religious or cultural group. Other. Throughout the world, patterns are used on objects of all kinds to add decoration or meaning to objects in daily life. Costume worn in public and religious life often use patterns to indicate to others that the wearer of the costume has a special role. Patterns are used to decorate utensils and dishware that people used to eat with. A pattern around the edge of a plate could be used to make it more interesting. A maker of dishware might use patterns to make a recognizable style of plates, cups, and other dishware. Patterns are used in fine arts such as paintings to create realistic depictions of objects with patterns. Patterns can also be used in non-realistic ways to create surreal, abstract, or non-realistic images in the world. Within a drawing, patterns can be used to give drawn objects shape or depth, such as the crosshatched patterns used to suggest depth or shadow. What makes a good pattern? Like all the elements and principles of artwork, whether a pattern is a good one depends on the person looking at it. There are some questions you might ask yourself when you see a pattern being used. There are no right or wrong answers to these questions. What's important is to go through the process of asking and answering them. Does the pattern distract from its surroundings, or does it blend in with them? Is the pattern restrained, or is it busy? A busy pattern might be made up of multiple colors and shapes that don't quite match, while a restrained pattern might be limited to a few colors and shapes. Does the pattern serve a purpose in an artwork, or does it seem random and arbitrary? You'll ask yourself these questions when you study the use of pattern in art. You can also use these questions to help you analyze your own artwork. Pattern can be used to add detail to artwork, or sometimes it can be the focus of an entire artwork. Let us learn more about specific uses of pattern. Kate Bunce was an English painter and poet from the late 19th to early 20th century. She was associated with the arts and crafts movement, which emphasized the craftsmanship and skill used to make household goods instead of their mechanical mass production. In her painting, The Keepsake, Bunce paints textiles, tiles, furniture, and stained glass with patterns on them. The woman in white is even sitting next to a partially woven rug or tapestry. All of the different patterns can be distracting, but the painting shows how patterns on different objects might combine in the world. The lack of pattern on the white dress makes that woman stand out compared to the other people and objects in the painting. Fractal. A fractal is a geometric pattern that repeats the same pattern at different scales. As you zoom in on a fractal, the same pattern is repeated again and again. Fractals occur in nature in things like snowflakes, fern leaves, and Romanesco broccoli. Some software programs use mathematical formulas to draw fractals. Different formulas draw different fractals. The example fractal is a simple one called a Koch snowflake. It starts with a triangle with equal sides and then adds a triangular bump to each side of the triangle. This can be repeated over and over again to create a fractal that looks like a snowflake. Even though mathematicians have been experimenting with fractals for more than a century, they weren't able to visualize fractals easily until the invention of modern computer graphics. Fractals are used in computer and video games to make organic-looking patterns. Artists use computers to set boundaries for fractals and then choose fractal images that fit their needs. Often, the fractal images are edited using other graphic editing software programs. Lindisfarne Gospels. The Lindisfarne Gospels is an English illuminated manuscript that was completed in the 7th or 8th century. Many historians believe that the Lindisfarne Gospels were the work of a single monk named Eadfrith, who later became the Bishop of Lindisfarne. This page from the Lindisfarne Gospels is called a carpet page. Carpet pages have little or no text and are used to separate different books or chapters in a manuscript. Like the example, carpet pages were often highly geometric with repeated patterns of squares, circles, and triangles. The repeated squares in the image are like tiles of color. In addition to the geometrical patterns, this page also has squares of patterns that look like woven threads. In the example image, pay attention to how patterns of color, shape, and line are used on this page. The Taj Mahal is a mausoleum in Agra, India. It was built in the 17th century by the Emperor Shah Jahan as a tomb and as a monument to the Shah's wife, Mumtaz Mahal. It is one of the most well-known and recognizable structures in the world. Millions of people visit the Taj Mahal every year. It took more than 20 years to build and was built by more than 20,000 workers and over 1,000 elephants. The Taj Mahal has patterns from the very largest, such as repeated domed shapes, to the very smallest, such as repeated flower shapes used to decorate walls and doorways. Okay, so I was just skimming through the questions to see which ones we haven't answered yet, and one of them was question 6, what is a textile? And if you remember, a textile is a material created from weaving together fibers to create a cloth or fabric. So click save on that one. Another question was 8, when you zoom in on a fractal, what happens? The same pattern is repeated again and again. Click save. Or is it a new pattern is created with a different formula? I'm pretty sure. I'm going to go back to that page because I just want to confirm that I'm remembering correctly, and remember that that's one of the awesome things about taking a test online is that you can go back and see what you missed. Okay, repeats the same pattern at different scales. The same pattern is repeated again and again. That's what I thought. Just make sure that you click save when you answer your questions so you don't lose your work. And the rest of the questions that we haven't answered yet are going to be coming from the next unit, which is 3.02. And we actually did unit 3.02 in class last time, and this video tutorial right here, unit 3 tile, will also help you to answer the last questions, which were a blank is what is shown on the computer screen behind all the software programs and icons. So open up that video and you'll find the answer to that question there. How are tiles different from tesserae? You'll find the answer to that question. A bitmap is a raster image, which means it's made up of what? You'll find the answer there. And which setting can help you force a point or line to be drawn on specific points on a grid? And you'll find the answer to that question in this video. In addition, if you haven't done that video, that means that you have not completed your tile that we did together in class. You need to get that tile done.